check on him. She immediately smells the pungent scent of burning incense and discovers that the chairman's estranged son is in the room and performing a ritual on the chairman. He was uttering an incantation to summon Buddhist gods for reincarnation. Professor in the will was also summoned to the station. The detective asks him why he and the wife are named inheritors instead of the son. He explains that the chairman disinherited his son and wanted nothing to do with it. Meanwhile, the maid is also brought in for questioning.
Is northeast on National Highway 34. Continue on National Highway 34 for 84 kilometers.
Eventually, she committed suicide, and their son never forgave his father for making his mother miserable. The years passed, and the chairman became terminally ill. To everyone's surprise, he took a young and attractive woman as his second wife, so the rift between father and son grew. Back in his spot behind the one-way mirror, the prosecutor reviews the crime scene report and notices that the killer probably is left-handed. He looks up and sees that the wife is also left-handed. After the interviews, he ordered the other detectives on the team to dig deeper into the first wife's fatal accident. The detective visits the crime scene and discovers a book on the occult previously owned by the first wife. She also notices that there is a camera installed in the second wife's room. She finds out that it was the doctor who installed the camera with the wife's consent, but he doesn't explain why. The detective returns to the station and gives a briefing to the team and the prosecutor. She goes over the mysterious death of the first wife. Apparently, the first wife had contacted a journalist on the day of her death and said she would expose the chairman. She asked the journalist to meet her near their house, but when the journalist arrived, the first wife jumped to her death from the terrace. It's reported that before she jumped, she threw a bunch of papers from the balcony, but they were never recovered. The detective highlights that the media had reported her death as an accidental fall and not as a suicide. She then discusses the contents of the book of the occult that she found. She explains that before her death, the first wife had conducted a ritual condemning her own soul in exchange for cursing her husband. Right after she died, the chairman was diagnosed with brain cancer, and his company began to suffer losses. In addition, there were also traces of the paralytic belladonna found in her lungs, and the incense her son later used also had belladonna. The team views the footage of the camera the detective found. The wife displays erratic behavior in the video, convulsing in her sleep and talking to the ghost of the first wife. They conduct a hearing to formally review the footage as evidence and question the wife. She reveals that ever since she moved into the house, she felt like she was being watched. After hearing about the first wife's demise, she becomes convinced that the first wife's ghost wants to possess her. The prosecutor undergoes another chemotherapy session. While waiting, he scrolls through articles about the doctor. He finds a tabloid article linking him and the first wife as lovers. He also finds another article detailing the two as the heads of the RNA restoration project of the chairman's company. His detective wife visits him in his hospital bed, and he goes through the footage again with her. He points out that the chairman's wife did start acting strangely after a few months. She entered the house as a shy and modest girl, and then became more elegant and confident. The prosecutor also noticed that initially the wife was right-handed, but is now left-handed. What's more, her signature had even changed. The doctor unveils the RNA restoration therapy that is forecasted to save the ailing company. RNA restoration works by distilling the RNA into a powder and applying it to the affected areas of the brain. But its most promising potential is its capability to transfer one consciousness to another host's body. After the event, the detective and the prosecutor interview the doctor once again. He reveals that the initial plan was that the wife would bear the chairman at New Air, and the doctor would use their RNA technology to remove the cancer gene from the fetus. The wife became pregnant, but the treatment also made her prone to seizures and hallucinations. The doctor also reveals that he used the technology to try to prolong the chairman's life. This is the same experimental RNA surgery that the prosecutor's oncologist recommended to him previously. The prosecutor shows the doctor the CCTV footage of him and the wife acting all cozy in her room. He also reveals that the journalist who witnessed the first wife's suicide had confessed that the doctor was actually there in the scene, and had paid him off to stay quiet regarding his involvement. The doctor must have collected all the incriminating papers the first wife threw off the balcony, which is why no one else has gotten hold of them. Based on that, the prosecutor then accuses the doctor of having an affair with both of the chairman's wives and attempting to use the RNA restoration technology to transfer the first wife's soul to the second wife's body. The police later arrest the son at his hiding place in a remote mountain. They sit him and the wife down to finally set the record straight. The wife gives herself a paper cut and squeezes blood out of the wound. The lights in the station flicker. The son shares that for his mother's death anniversary, he went home to pay his respects. His second wife gave him a letter from his mother detailing instructions on how he could finish the ritual and kill the chairman so her soul could ascend to paradise. This is what propelled him to kill his father. The wife then appears to be possessed by the spirit of the first wife, and she thanks the son for killing the chairman. She clasps his hand with her bloodied hand and then faints due to her hematophobia. Meanwhile, the prosecutor's condition worsens. He can no longer bathe and relieve himself, and he has lost a lot of weight. His wife is able to get him into the experimental RNA clinical trial, but the treatment is hard on his body. Despite it all, he still works on the case from his hospital bed. On the other side of the city, the wife frantically calls the police after the doctor tries to kill her and chases her through the house. The doctor then escapes. The prosecutor reviews the audio recordings extracted from the cell phone that the chairman used to call the police on the night of his murder. He discovers that his detective wife had actually edited the recording to cut out the part where the wife confronted the chairman after he was attacked by his son and demanded that he turn over the company to her. He confronts the detective, and she admits that she blackmailed the wife with the evidence and asked her to give the prosecutor a slot in the RNA clinical trial in exchange for her erasing that part of the recording. The prosecutor gets angry with his wife for sacrificing her morals and jeopardizing her job for him, because even though the RNA surgery can prolong his life, it wouldn't matter much if his cancer would come back anyway. He confesses that he is tired of being sick and that he wants to die soon and be free of the pain. The wife arrives at the station to give her statement regarding the incident. She says that the doctor visited her the previous night to give her more injections for her baby, but he began to demand that she relinquish control of the company over to him. When she refused, the doctor began to chase her. The prosecutor arrives at the station in a wheelchair and confronts the wife about the recordings. He accuses her of masterminding the murder plot by fabricating the letter she gave to the son on his mother's death anniversary, which later spurred him to do the ritual and ultimately kill the chairman. The prosecutor then has an epiphany, noting the many similarities in the voice and tone of the chairman and the wife. He surmises that instead of transferring the first wife's consciousness to the second wife's body, the doctor had actually transferred after he's gone, but she tells him that all she wants is him. The next day, the detective leaves for work, and the doctor visits the prosecutor at their home. He reveals that he and the chairman were actually lovers, and that the chairman had always felt like he was a woman. But the chairman had to hide his true identity because he was a public figure, and revealing the truth would cause negative publicity for his company. As a result, he also married his first wife, one of the researchers working under him, and they kept up the appearance of a happy couple. But behind closed doors, he was actually neglecting his wife, who sent her into a depression. The doctor felt guilty that he was the cause of the first wife's unhappiness, and so he became close to her. The doctor and the first wife began to work on the RNA project, and the chairman had the idea of using the technology to transfer his soul to a body of a woman. However, the first wife later discovered their affair and cursed the chairman before committing suicide. The papers she had thrown off the balcony before jumping were actually pictures of the chairman and the doctor together in their trysts. Shortly after, the chairman became sick with cancer. The RNA project was their last chance of saving the chairman, so they picked a second wife from an orphanage, and the chairman married her. They told her they were just going to do an RNA treatment on her to make sure their baby won't carry the cancer gene. But the truth was that the doctor was working on transferring the chairman's soul to his young wife's body. It was a slow process consisting of many sessions, but eventually the chairman gained consciousness in the body of his second wife. They also planned.
Hey, what's up guys? Today I'll show you a horror film, Silent Hill. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. In the middle of the night, a pretty short-haired woman called Sexy abruptly goes out of their home to find their adopted child, short-named Daughter. As she shouts Daughter's name, her husband, Mr. Muscles, quickly responds to help her find Daughter. She then walks through the river, which leads to a dangerous waterfall cliff. On the other side of the cliff, she sees Daughter, who appears to be sleepwalking. In Daughter's perspective, the cliff turns out to be a chaotic bottomless pit, while a creepy girl from the pit seems to be calling her. She is about to jump the cliff, so Sexy rushes to catch her. As Sexy manages to save her, she continuously screams Silent Hill. It seems that Daughter has a supernatural condition, so Mr. Muscles arrives to assure them that everything will be fine. 2 years later, Sexy and Daughter are having a sweet moment together in the middle of the sunny meadows. Sexy then tells daughter that they are going on a trip towards a place called Silent Hill. Since daughter keeps talking about the place while sleepwalking, her daughter cannot remember herself talking about it. So Sexy says they are going there to remind her of the place. They then leave and pass through a sign with a scripture that implies that people and saints have judgment over the world and the angels. Meanwhile, Mr. Muscles tries to call them. He is frustrated, as it appears that he is not informed about the trip. He then checks Sexy's browsing history, revealing that they are heading towards a haunted ghost town called Silent Hill. He finds out that the town's population was wiped out 30 years ago due to a tragic underground fire. Sexy and daughter proceed to drive towards Silent Hill. As night comes, they take a stop at the gas station. After pouring gas on their car, she checks daughter inside, and she finds her sketchpad with a creepy picture of a burning place. She thinks that daughter did it, so she shows it to her. But daughter insists she did not draw the picture, while she cries in terror upon seeing it. Her crying calls the attention of the policewoman, nicknamed Ms. Officer. As Sexy comes to pay for the gas inside, Ms. Officer checks daughter in the car. Daughter then utters the rule that she never talks to strangers. Ms. Officer then says she is a good girl. Meanwhile, Sexy asks the cashier for directions towards Silent Hill. The cashier replies that the way there doesn't exist anymore. Also, the cashier tells Sexy that her card is declined. So Sexy just pays with the cash. Then, she calls Mr. Muscles, informing him that he can't stop them from going to Silent Hill. He then insists that daughter needs medical attention. On the contrary, she thinks the medications will never work. So she will bring daughter to Silent Hill to figure out the reason behind daughter's strange condition. It turns out that daughter might have come from Silent Hill before her adoption. Shortly after, she proceeds to drive away with daughter. Later, they are driving along the mountain highways. His officer pulls them over, so Sexy stops the car. But when she sees a sign that Silent Hill is already nearby, she quickly drives away again.
Ding ding pie.
She drives the car fast enough that she manages to pass through the gate. Suddenly, a creepy girl walks into the middle of the road. Sexy then avoids the girl and crashes the car on the side. The next morning, Sexy wakes up from the car accident, realizing that daughter is missing. The surrounding is covered with a heavy fog, while ashes keep falling. Sexy walks out of the car and proceeds to search for daughter. She sees a sign that says Silent Hill, notifying her that she has finally arrived at the town. As she walks along the foggy streets of the ghost town, she notices a young girl that seems to be daughter running around. She chases it until she reaches a long staircase towards a basement. She hears a loud siren as darkness comes, so she uses her lighter to explore the dark basement. Inside, she sees a mutilated man in a hazmat suit, which freaks her a lot. So she immediately tries to run away, but behind her is a troop of roasted baby zombies slowly moving towards her. They are trying to drag her. She releases a scream as she becomes helpless. The zombies then suddenly disappear. The following day, she wanders again through the desolate streets to find daughter. She then stumbles upon a homeless woman called Greasy Mother, who tells her that they both lost their children. When she shows daughter's photo, Greasy Mother tries to steal it, so she immediately walks away from her. She then returns to their car. There, she sees a drawing of a burning school. Shortly after, she sends a voicemail to Mr. Muscles, informing him that she lost daughter. Suddenly, Ms. Officer comes to arrest her. thinking that she did something bad to daughter. Apparently, Ms. Office was able to follow her yesterday. Meanwhile, Mr. Muscles is driving towards Silent Hill to find them. He receives Sexy's voicemail along the way, but it is completely distorted. As he arrives at the town gate, a police officer intercepts him. It turns out that the police officer is also trying to find Sexy and Ms. Officer, so they plan to find them in the town. Back to the town, Sexy and Ms. Officer try to walk out of there, but the road is completely cut off. As they are figuring out a way out, a monster suddenly appears. The monster spits hot ash at Ms. Officer, which burns her suit. She then shoots the monster to death. Sexy grabs this chance to run away immediately. She proceeds to go towards the school, hoping to find daughter there. As she enters the school, she slowly surveys everything. Suddenly, she sees people in hazmat suits patrolling the area. She then immediately goes towards the other building. As she walks along the classroom, she notices a young girl running around. She then chases the young girl along the stairway. Soon after, she arrives at the bathroom, where she finds another mutilated body tied up by barbed wires. She then takes an object out of its smelly mouth. Suddenly, the people in hazmat suits find her in the bathroom. She locks the door, but they are forcibly trying to open it. Fortunately, the bird chirps, signaling them that darkness is coming. So they immediately run away to find shelter. As darkness comes, the loud siren blares again. The place around her starts rotting, and the mutilated body starts moving. As the mutilated body touches the wall, the place suddenly decays. The mutilated body slowly crawls towards her, so she immediately runs away. In the hallways, she sees large cockroaches devouring the zombified men. She then quickly runs away. Shortly after, she reaches a burning pit. As she crosses the pathway to the other side, she sees a young girl named Alessa furiously sketching on the paper. As Alessa looks at her, she falls out of the window. The slaughterman with a big sword walks outside, so she quickly stands up and runs towards the other building. Meanwhile, Mr. Muscles and the officer arrive inside the Silent Hill school. They are at the same location as Sexy, but they cannot see her. However, Mr. Muscles is able to smell Sexy's perfume. He then knows that Sexy is there. It appears that Sexy is trapped in the alternate dimension, while they are in the real dimension. This means they cannot see Sexy, since they are not in the same dimensions. Back to Sexy. She stops running inside due to tiredness, so the cockroaches are able to swarm towards her. Fortunately, Ms. Officer arrives and drags her towards the room. They then immediately lock the door, but the slaughterman slices it repeatedly, trying to enter the room. Luckily, the slaughterman and the creepy creatures suddenly disappear, while the surroundings go back to normal. It turns out that everything turns into a normal condition when morning comes. To continue their search for daughter, they follow a clue from the object found by Sexy earlier, which leads them towards the hotel. As they come inside the hotel, they find a woman throwing stones at Greasy Mother. The woman tells them that Greasy Mother is a cast-out who has already lost her daughter. The woman comes there to scavenge for some food for her mother. It appears that there are other people in the town who seek shelter at the church. Suddenly, Ms. Officer finds a creepy drawing in the locker of room number 111, so they decide to find the room. Meanwhile, Mr. Muscles is desperate to find Sexy and daughter, so he sneaks into the archives at night to figure out what happened to them at Silent Hill. As he checks the files, he finds a police case that refers to Alessa as a victim of burning. Back at the hotel, they proceed on finding the room. As they search for the room, they see a painting that depicts an act of burning a witch. They figure out that the people there are witch hunters who burn witches, since they believe it can prevent the apocalypse. Sexy suddenly figures out that room 111 is behind the painting. As they enter the room, they find everything completely burned out. Meanwhile, Alessa shows herself to Sexy, so Sexy quickly chases her until she reaches a pit. There, Alessa shows herself burning, and then instantly disappears. Suddenly, the bird flies out of the pit, which signifies that darkness. Sexy, Ms. Officer, and the woman quickly head towards the cult church to seek refuge. It turns out that the church is a safe place during darkness, since it does not change during the evening. When they arrive at the church, they see a crowd of cult fanatics flocking inside. Greasy Mother also warns Sexy and Ms. Officer not to be deceived by the cult, since the cult fanatics are already damned for their sins. As everyone goes inside the church, the woman comes back to throw stones at Greasy Mother. Suddenly, the slaughterman appears behind the woman and grabs her. Shortly after, the slaughterman ripped her body in half, leading to her gruesome death. Meanwhile, the church door closes. The cult fanatics curse at Sexy and Ms. Officer, since the fanatics believe that they are witches. So Ms. Officer shoots her final bullet to silence them. The cult leader walks in, telling everyone they need to pray, so they proceed on performing the prayer. After the prayer, Sexy desperately asks the cult leader to find daughter. The cult leader reveals that Sexy needs to face the demon to find daughter. The cult leader also warns her about the danger of facing the demon, but she insists on facing it. They then head towards the hospital together with the cult members wearing hazmat suits. The cult leader shows the demon's location to Sexy through the map at the hospital. As she is about to ride the elevator, the cult leader realizes that she is daughter's mother. So the cult leader tells the fanatics to catch her, because they think daughter is a witch. But Ms. Officer prevents them, and helps her go down using the elevator. She then successfully goes down the basement, while Ms. Officer is left alone to face the fanatics. Ms. Officer has no bullet left, so the fanatics proceed on beating her. Meanwhile, Sexy is able to enter the demon's room, where a voice tells her the truth behind Silent Hill. The voice tells her that the whole town believed that Alessa was a witch, so everyone hated her. It turns out that her mother is actually Greasy Mother, who got cast out by the town. The cult leader convinced Greasy Mother that they needed to purify Alessa, so she agreed to the cult leader due to the pressure from the cult. The cult brought Alessa to the hotel room to burn her. As the cult performs the ritual, the fire accidentally spreads through the hotel, burning everything on its way. The police officer then found Alessa still alive, but she suffered great pain, because her body was already toasted. Greasy Mother regretted her decision upon seeing Alessa's gruesome condition. Therefore, since then, Alessa seeks revenge on the whole town, and the demon comes to help her seek revenge. Apparently, the young Alessa, who keeps running around the town, is the demon using Alessa's appearance, while the real Alessa is still lying on the bed. Also, it turns out that daughter is Alessa's good side. To keep daughter safe, the demonic Alessa brought daughter to the orphanage, where Sexy and Mr. Muscles soon adopted her. Now, the demonic Alessa warns Sexy that the cult leader plans to purify daughter by burning her. The demonic Alessa then enters Sexy's body, so she can go inside the church to prevent the cult from burning daughter. Meanwhile, the cult members take out daughter from Greasy Mother's apartment. Apparently, Greasy Mother kept her all along, so the cult could not find her. Unfortunately, the cult leader figures out that she is hiding daughter. Later, the cult prepares a large bonfire for the purifying ritual. The cult is about to burn Ms. Officer and daughter. They firstly put Ms. Officer on the fire, which slowly burns her. As the fire slowly toasts Ms. Officer, the smelly cult members cheer on the side, while also mocking her. After she gets burned to death, the cult prepares daughter for the ritual by tying her on the ladder. Sexy suddenly arrives completely horrified by the scene. She slowly walks in, declaring that the cult members are already damned for burning an innocent child. She then states with conviction that the cult leader is a sinner. So the cult leader instantly stabs her in anger. As her blood drops to the ground, the church suddenly turns into decay, which is a sign that the demon finally penetrates the church. A pit opens up at the ritual stage where the real Alessa, surrounded by barbed wires, slowly rises up. The real Alessa scares the cult members. The real Alessa then grabs the ugly cult leader using the barbed wires, while she also attacks the smelly cult members. The barbed wires then pierce through the cult leader's body and rip it in half. Meanwhile, the demonic Alessa is dancing on the ground as body organs fall to the ground. On the side, Sexy stabs one of the cult members, so the other member tries to attack her. The barbed wires then squeeze the cult member to death. After that, the barbed wires execute the filthy cult members one after the other until no one left, while Greasy Mother is walking through the organs dropping on the floor. Meanwhile, Sexy tries to close daughter's eyes to stop her from seeing the violence, but daughter still opens her eyes. She then sees demonic Alessa looking at her. The following day, Sexy and daughter wake up. It appears that everything is finally over, while the demon seemingly possesses daughter since daughter is acting strangely. Shortly after, they walk out of the church, leaving Greasy Mother in a sad state of loneliness. They proceed on driving towards their home. At their arrival at home, it appears to be completely foggy, and they are still completely alone. In the end, Sexy and daughter appear to be still trapped in the alternate dimension, while Mr. Muscles is waiting for their arrival at home in the real dimension. Stay safe and enjoy your day.
Hey, what's up, guys? Today I'll show you a classic horror film, a classic horror story. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. Elisa, a junior doctor, is pregnant out of wedlock, but her irresponsible boyfriend disappears. After much consideration, Elisa decides to visit her parents to get an abortion at the behest of her controlling mother. So she books carpooling and joins four strangers in a ride-share camper bound for southern Italy. The driver, Fabrizio, is a goofball local who owns the camper and makes vlogs of his travels. The passengers include a loving foreign couple named boyfriend and girlfriend, who are on their way to a friend's wedding, and a sullen middle-aged man named Ricardo, who claims to be a doctor. Elisa is the fifth one on board, and she looks rather shy before the camera. Fabrizio has prepared beer for the passengers, and boyfriend helps to distribute them. At first, Elisa refuses to drink due to her pregnancy, but in the end, she joins them in drinking. On their journey, a billboard has caught Elisa's attention. Strangely, the eyes of the ambassador have all been masked. This leads to a discussion of the mafia among the five persons. The mafia is one of the main causes of crime in the region, and they are obviously involved in the disappearance of various residents. While they are talking, Elisa begins to puke, so Fabrizio stops the car for her to alight. Since no one knows she is pregnant, they simply think she has some motion sickness. After that, boyfriend, who is drunk, insists on driving the camper. No one approves his plan, but boyfriend sticks himself to the driver's seat and pushes his way through. As it is a remote area, the rest finally allows him to take over the driving duties. Night falls, only Fabrizio and boyfriend stay awake in the car, and they are actively engaged in conversations. Fabrizio reveals that he is a film school student and has been suffering hearing loss as a result of violence. Shortly after, they pass by a signboard that says, "Watch out for the deer." They find an animal lying ahead. Fabrizio swerves out of the way as soon as he sees the animal on the road and crashes the camper into a tree. When the five return to consciousness in the morning, Mark's leg is broken. Doctor treats his wounds and resets his leg. Elisa tries to call an ambulance, only to find the region without any cell reception. They want to ask for help on the road, but there is apparently no roadway in sight. No one knows why they end up in such a place, because the car accident last night was taking place on the road. Now the road they were traveling on has disappeared, and there is only a dense, impenetrable forest and a wooden house in the middle of the clearing. To make it more creepy, they also find a pole with 6 lamps surrounding a loudspeaker. They decide to enlist the help of the house owner. Girlfriend peeks through the glass window of the house and discovers a blood-stained table. Since no one answers the door, they have to return to the camper. Fabrizio and boyfriend blame each other for the car crash. No matter what, they have arrived at a bizarre location, which is definitely inaccessible by car. After they wonder what has happened, Fabrizio and Doctor venture into the forest to find ways to leave this place. Having grown up here, Fabrizio is more familiar with the surroundings. He suggests that they should head to the south. On the camper, Lisa attempts to contact her mother, but she cannot send any messages. Girlfriend comes over to chat with her and shares her candid videos of the couple. In such a dire situation, bonds are forged between the strangers because they could only count on each other now. While walking in the forest, Fabrizio recalls a movie he has watched before. It is about a group of people spending their time as usual without realizing they are thrown into hell. And they are taken aback by the eerie altar set up in front of them. 3 scarecrows draped in red cloth stand on a branch with bloody pig heads underneath and a sign that reads, "3 Nights of Glory." Looks like a ritual of some sort of cult. Fabrizio and Doctor do not dare to venture further, so they detour. Back to the car, Elisa is shocked to find the door of the wooden house swung open. As the couple fall asleep, Elisa alone goes out to check. She first asks if anyone is in the house, but no one responds. As Elisa observes, the seemingly abandoned house is filled with photos of people with animal masks. Suddenly, a weird sound breaks the dooming silence. Elisa traces the sound to a room with many candles lit up, and then Fabrizio unfolds the legend of Osso, Mastrosso, and Carcagnasso. As recorded on the ritualistic mural, the 3 deities consist of the blind, the deaf, and the mute. A long time ago, the village was stricken by famine, and many villagers were starved to death. The 3 Nights of Glory promises to save the villagers on the condition of them offering eyes, ears, and tongues for sacrifice, rather than for massage. Ever since then, such a ritual has been passing down for generations to come. Fabrizio and Doctor are reminded of the 5 pig heads on the altar, which might correspond to the 5 of them. Terrified, they decide to spend the night away from the house and sleep in the car. Boyfriend begins to blame himself for the inconveniences that he has brought to the other passengers on board. Fabrizio analyzes what they are going through is very similar to the plot of horror movies. And then Fabrizio walks into the jungle to pee, but he is scared off by 2 men wearing masks. While Fabrizio is away, a light is switched on from the house. Armed with torch lights, girlfriend and Elisa again leave the camper to check it out. The bold and courageous girlfriend first pulls down a ladder and climbs up to the second floor. At this time, Fabrizio returns to the car and cautions everyone that they are not alone in the woods. The doctor then abandons the injured boyfriend and flees to the wooden house along with Fabrizio. Together, the four of them spot a mute girl trapped in a glass enclosure and a massage tun soap in the water beside her. According to legend, this poor girl must be one of the sacrifices chosen by the villagers. All of a sudden, the red alert of the